G'day, it's Greg Clark from the Centre for Public Christianity. And today we're talking about happiness. And here to do the talking with me is Dr. Brian Rosner, a CPX fellow and a lecturer in ethics. Thanks for being here, Brian.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah. Now, you've been to a conference recently in Sydney about happiness. What kind of conference was it? Was there an overall message the conference had to deliver?
It was entitled Happiness and Its Causes. It was over 2,000 people at Darling Harbour, very nice and friendly setting. Sort of educational entertainment, I guess you'd say. Wendy Harmer was the MC, and you had a mix of psychology, economics, some local celebrities were there, that kind of thing.
It does seem to be, at the moment, a real sense of disillusionment about the material culture, and so things like happiness and discussion of what more there might be for human beings is really on the agenda. Where do you think this is coming from, and why is it that humans seem to not really know where to look to get their satisfaction?
Yeah, the conference didn't really have one consistent message, you have to say. The letter of welcome in the front of the conference pack said we kind of have a smorgasbord of techniques and perspectives on happiness. But one thing that did come through pretty consistently was the notion that you can't buy happiness with money, which is one thing that most people these days probably agree to in their hearts, but the way we act seems to be quite different.
There's a real kind of difference between that truism and the actual kind of way society works.
That's right, and Professor Daniel Gilbert from Harvard tried to explain that in a couple of ways. He talked about two concepts. One of them was the notion of diminishing marginal utility, which says that every dollar you earn gets you less happiness. So really, 90% of your happiness is purchased with the first 10% of your money, but we don't behave that way. We think that if we earn a great deal more, we'll be a great deal more happy. But the graph kind of drops off in one sense.
It's very counterintuitive, isn't it? People are trying to climb the ladder because when I get to the top, I'll be even happier than I am now. I
think that's right. The other concept I found helpful was the notion of habituation, which says that when you get something new, you get a great deal of pleasure from it, but there's a law of diminishing returns, effectively. I can see that in my own life. Recently, work bought me a brand new 24-inch Macintosh computer. Whenever a friend came over, I'd show it off to them. But after a while, it's just my computer, and you can only sleep in one bed, sit on one sofa, live in one house. Those kind of cliches are actually quite true when it comes to money.
I don't know what it says about those of us who are always buying second-hand things.
Well, you're probably just as happy as people who bought the shiny one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it goes deeper than that, though. From my perspective, I think materialism has such a grasp on us because it's a worldview that says there's nothing else apart from material things. And if all there is to life and the world is material things, then you may as well get as much of them and as many of them as you can. The other thing that I wonder about is whether we've replaced God with material things, such as in the past you'd look to God as your supreme place of trust. These days people look to securities and superannuation and savings accounts, whereas in the past you might have looked to serve God in some way in your life. These days we end up paradoxically serving things. And just as in the past our ultimate love was for something beyond this world, these days, because people have a materialistic worldview, we put so much stock, excuse the pun, in material things that we love things rather than something more valuable.
You're listening to the vodcast for the Centre for Public Christianity. For more great content, why not subscribe at publicchristianity.org.
Speaking of God and worldviews, we heard in reports that there really wasn't much discussion of Christianity at all at the conference, and one speaker was referred to as the token Christian. What do you make of that?
Yes, it's certainly true that there was very little Christian input at the conference. The main religious or spiritual input was from Buddhism, and the conference sponsor, one of the main sponsors, was a Buddhist institute here in Sydney. So that wasn't surprising at one level. On the other hand, I think I'd have to admit that Christians don't really think of themselves as having a lot to say about happiness. Most of my Christian friends gave me no encouragement for going to the conference. Some said I want to be holy rather than happy. Others said I'm too busy to be happy. The Bible doesn't say much about happiness. Most of those things I think I'm coming to disagree with, but you can see why people may have thought Christian faith has little to say about being happy.
Wow, I mean, you often hear people don't think of Christians as very happy people, but what really does the Christian faith have to say on this topic of happiness?
Well, in my view, I think Christianity has a lot to say about happiness. Jesus talked about his disciples being blessed, which is sometimes translated happy. Blessed are the poor in spirit, Jesus said. So it seems to be pretty central to his agenda for his followers. Paul, when he wrote to churches, the Apostle Paul, one of Jesus' followers, wished them grace and peace. And peace is obviously something that has an important element of positive emotion to it. So I think Christianity does have more to say than people realise.
Do we just need to unpack this word happy?
I think that's certainly the case. And the conference actually had lots of different definitions of happiness. People were thinking of happiness as positive emotion, but beyond that, there was a recognition that that's rather banal if you just think of being upbeat and buoyant. That's obviously not what humans are looking for in the long term. Martin Seligman was very helpful from the University of Pennsylvania. He defined happiness in three ways. There was the kind of positive emotion, the pleasant life, but there was also a positive character, which meant that people had some purpose. And psychologists talk about flow, where you're so involved and engaged with something you lose track of time and space. That's obviously a great state to be in sometimes. And then thirdly, he talked about positive institutions, which was interesting. The engaged and the purposeful life. So people feel like when they belong to something bigger than themselves, there's a sense in which we can claim to be happy.